Ladies and gentlemen, this is your final boarding call for the good ship SS Tomorrow.
Today on The Friendly Futurist, 20 months into the pandemic, how much has the workplace changed? Today we're going to give you a bit of a history lesson because there has been a historic precedent. See, every pandemic has altered the workforce, and this one is no exception. It's mainly due to where labour hire is and cost of living, everything like that is being disrupted. Now, today's guests, I've got 3 different tales to tell, all about automation and AI and all how they be affecting the modern workforce in one shape or another. Now, our first tale is from Kaya Mason in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, this is a common thing for everyone, especially in areas with a mask mandate, is that we've gone off to the shops, work, office, whatever, an indoor environment, we're required to have a mask, and being humans not used to having a mask on hand, we get denied entry because we haven't covered our faces. This happened to Kaya one night going out to a convenience store in Atlanta, but rather than accepting situation or whinge on Facebook, this is what I love about you, dear listeners, and all the other future heads who are listening to this podcast, is that we don't take things lying down. Kaya got quite a scientific mind, and she's also quite entrepreneurial. What Kaya done is invent a PPE, personal protective equipment, vending machine, particularly for masks, for those who are caught short and still want to carry on with their lives. And Kaya is very kind to join us on the line right now. Hi Kaya, welcome to the show. And first of all, can you just give my listeners a story about your journey setting up PPE vending machines?
Yes. Hi, Dave. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm just so honored to be here with you. Yes, so I am Kaya Mason. And during the pandemic in March of 2020, I was taking a trip to a market, a local market, just after the pandemic was announced. And I wanted to take an essentials trip, of course, to one of the markets near me. And as I began to enter the front door, I was denied entrance. Young lady said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, you will not be able to enter." And I'm looking around just to see exactly what's going on and why can I not enter. And she says, "Well, you should be wearing a mask." And I asked her, okay, I wanted to see exactly who else was around not wearing a mask and what are the options. So I asked the young lady if they were selling masks. And she says, "Oh, no, ma'am, we're not." And she looked at me kind of strangely as if that was, a question that seems to be a little far-fetched. And so next I asked, "Well, are you all giving away or donating masks?" And she again said, "No, ma'am." She replied no. So on my long trip home or return home, I had to come up with a solution to that issue or that problem. And I'm an analytical girl, a scientist, and have always been, and always look for solutions to problems. And in this situation, it affected me directly and so many other people. And I was just certain that there were others around that I did not see who were actually involved in the same situation. So in order to prevent a wasted trip, not only for myself, but for people like me who are, out to get their essentials during the pandemic. My solution was to create a vending machine that will hold those products. And those products will be masks, of course, hand sanitizers, wipes, gloves, and even some other PPE equipment. And from there, I, did a lot of research and education and did some studying and invested heavily. And boom, it became GAMS Global Solutions Incorporated, my PPE vending business. And at that point, I began to surface,
Yeah.
people began to see the machine and see what benefits that it was bringing out. And I began to get calls from people and emails about asking me to actually help them with that same process or to build profitable vending businesses. So, being an educator, I'm a high school science teacher at heart. I took those skill sets and created a curriculum that will actually walk through the process step by
Wow.
step, tackling those most difficult tasks first, and giving the information, that insider information that's needed in order to build a profitable vending business. Yeah,
Wow.
so it started right from there. Yes.
Yeah. And how has your vending machines been received locally, first and foremost?
They've been received actually well, Dave.
Wow.
The thing is, people are needing PPE, face mask in particular. Maybe not for every single business right now, but in that point in time, in June and July of last year, of 2020, everybody was demanding that you must wear a mask.
Mm.
So it was received very well. I could tell, that people were patronizing and utilizing the equipment and the tools that I placed out for their usage. So it has done very well. Now, the key to that was finding the locations that will allow my placement of the machines, and it will actually help to serve as a conduit for that business and their customers, just providing that convenience to help them to keep their doors open, as a matter of fact.
Yes, well,
Yes.
it was something that we all needed during the pandemic. I mean, here we always had a mask mandate when we're going into lockdown, and this is why I love entrepreneurs. This is we saw a problem, we come up with this brilliant solution. Probably otherwise, it probably would have gone astray.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So it helps that, as an entrepreneur, that we are creative. We
Mm.
can sit right into that, our purpose of building and designing things that will help society.
Yeah.
So absolutely, yes. It's been rewarding to say it.
Absolutely. Moving into the post-COVID world, Kaya, what else can you see being distributed in your vending machines?
Very good question, Dave. Now, the fact that we are in this post-COVID space right now, and there are still some variants of the virus that are out and are plaguing human evolution. So I honestly believe that there is still a need for PPE in certain places, especially in public places, perhaps malls and restaurants
Yeah.
or little places where people frequent often. So at this point, Dave, I am doing some changes with my machines. Of course, I will keep the PPE equipment in about three of them, but then I will begin to merge into offering other products. And those products are going to be determined basically by the clientele or the foot traffic. So I've got some surveys out to see what people are actually
Wow.
wanting so that we can, service them in that way.
And as this podcast is about the future, how do you see vending machines fitting into a more automated workplace?
Very good question. Now, for the future, there are several entities that are seeping into the vending industry. First and foremost, we've got high-tech machines, high-tech vending machines with face recognition and touch screens that can directly link to your smartphones. You can make orders before you get to the machines. That automated world is actually taking a flight in the vending space. So machines are beginning to be a lot more attractive, and they can allow people to just be introduced to that high-tech society, more or less. Also, the products within the machines can be high tech products. Let's say that we've got, a supply of AirPods. You can totally put AirPods or take the
Wow.
devices into vending machines, and I've seen it several places. Absolutely. So headphones,
Mm.
sound equipment, anything like that, and we can go, as non-technical as we could to pair of socks. I've seen that in vending machines. So we are definitely in the wave of futuristic and technology so that we can service this. It's a 24-hour, 365 business, having the freedom to purchase items at your own free will, and having those selections gives you the I guess, the upper hand in the vending industry.
Yeah.
So we've got an industry that can maximize any industries. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And the case for all pandemics now, the workplace does get transformed. And this is another classic example of that. I mean, I can see the potential, like saying, go onto like a bus station or a train station and have the headphones there because someone got them, left them at home, or lost the pair, or the pair got damaged, or whatever the excuse. Like, that's a really good example, and there is something to it. I think there is. It's not necessarily robots taking our jobs; it's robots assisting us to go into a better job.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. It's the machinery, the automated machinery that's assisting us with our workloads versus competing
Mm.
against those things. So yes, it is absolutely beneficial.
Is there anything else driving your curiosity right now, Kaya?
Driving my curiosity in vending machines.
Or anything in life in general?
As a matter of fact, there are a couple of things that I am embarking upon in the vending industry. I don't know if I can speak on it right now. We're still in the development stages, but we are definitely partnering with some farms so that we can source out other products that are fresher
Wow.
and can also be, medicinally assistant that can help with anxiety and things of that nature. So, yes, we're looking at branching into other avenues in medicine in particular.
Wow. And I'm enjoying my chat with you today. Where else can our listeners find you?
Oh, great. Yes. So your listeners can find me on social media. We tend to love social media from time to time. I am on Instagram at I am Kaya Mason, KAYAMASON. I am Kaya Mason, as well as my website at kayamason.com. So I can be found in those entities. I am on Facebook at Kaya Mason, as well as Twitter and LinkedIn. So all of them, you can find me at Kaya Mason, or I am Kaya Mason.
Well, Kaya, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and good luck with your endeavours. I think you're doing something quite amazing there, and we'll check in with you in a couple of months and see how you're progressing.
Super awesome, Dave. I appreciate the invitation. Keep me posted on how things go, and
Yeah.
so we can definitely connect again soon.
Yeah, will do. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You enjoy.
And thank you, Kaya, for your input. Automatic vending machines are one aspect of automation we haven't really been covering too much in this podcast, but we'll be covering in the future. Maybe we're looking at waiterless restaurants in Japan, but you know where else I've noticed vending machines? And if you've ever been to Holland, it's actually in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam in particular, with Fibo, where they got the automats, which were quite common in the 40s, but gone out of fashion pretty much everywhere else except for Amsterdam. Our next guest actually is from Amsterdam, and we're going to looking at how AI is going to shape the role of the workplace of the future. Now, my guests are Christian and Himanshu from Design Bro, who's a marketplace for creatives. And we're going to look at how automation will shape, and particularly a creative industry like graphic design or web design, which will make a very interesting chat. And Christian and Himanshu are on the line right now. Hi and welcome back, and today we've got Himanshu and Christian from Design Bro, which is an online creative marketplace, in the studio, and today we're going to discuss the role that AI plays in the workplace of the future, particularly with a design studio, well, design agency rather. Fellas, thanks for joining us on the show first and foremost, and first of all, can you just give us a spiel what Design Bro is all about, or the backstory behind Design Bro?
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, thanks first of all, for having us. It's great to be on the show. Design Bro is an online marketplace essentially for graphic design. So we tend to have SMEs as our major customers. And what it is really is my background comes from the design industry side. And, having had an agency for over 12 years, all of a sudden you come to the conclusion that that's not so well organized. The model, of course, was invented in the 60s. And a lot of those things with the technology that we have nowadays, those processes aren't that logic. So, we essentially optimized those. We streamlined everything. We automated a lot of these things. And we made sure that designers are directly connected with our customers all over the world without having the trouble and the overhead that you would have in the traditional agency model.
How has Design Bro disrupted the traditional agency model?
It's a good question, and it's really in two parts. I mean, the first part is that, first of all, agencies are still out there and they're still existing, and the industry is under pressure, but at the same time, It's companies like DesignBro that are disrupting them, on one hand, by the obvious, which is cost. But more importantly, the reason that a company like DesignBro is more affordable is because of the processes that have largely been automated. So think about the project management. I mean, if you're going to hire an agency, you're going to have to deal with account managers, and internally they have traffic managers. Then they have to organize everything. They have strategists, So you got a whole team of people working on your project just for the simple, relatively simple thing that you wanted to have designed. And then they need to house all of those people. So you're paying for the bricks and mortar on that. And you want physical meetings, so you got to have that space to go into. So before you know it, you're actually spending about 80% of your budget on the overhead rather than on the actual design. And when I have conversations with clients, they want it the other way around. They want 80% to be spent on the design and 20% on overhead. So I think in a nutshell, we try to flip that around.
Yeah, good. And how much has the creative marketplace changed in the past 18 months?
Well, 18 months is always a relatively short period of time. But if you take a slightly longer period, because also we've had COVID and everything, so, there's been some major disruption with regards to that. But one of the major trends that we saw at my agency as little as 4 years ago was that every year budgets were going down. Clients are under pressure, marketeers are under pressure. They need to make sure that they deliver more for less. That's fine. It hollows out your margins over a longer period of time. And from that point of view, automation becomes incredibly important. The first thing that agencies tend to grab to is they want to deliver more services to try and retain the same price. But in reality, you're creating even more overhead as a consequence. So from that point of view, what you see is that agencies are under pressure. Smaller agencies especially, they're starting to fold. The larger ones, sort of with the really large retainers, they tend to survive, but they cut out some of their costs. And at the same time, you see online marketplaces thrive.
And will automation take away the designer's job or allow for more of a streamlined process?
Of course, we see this across the board, not just in design. I mean, people's jobs are under threat everywhere. I would say in an agency, at this moment in time, I would say probably the designers' jobs are under threat. But in reality, the automation for when designers do join, let's say, to these new platforms, can actually earn them a decent living as well. And it's just a different type of earning model. It's difficult to make that switch, especially if you're used to, working in a traditional way. But at the same time, there is opportunity there as well, also for the designers.
And slightly on that subject too, do you see and notice there's a lot more globalization in this sort of design agency area? Like you have different people from different countries, especially ones in, say, Europe or in Australia, outsourcing into, say, parts of Asia?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of globalization going on. And I think there's a difference between globalization and major outsourcing, so to speak, because at the end of the day, what we believe is that what's most important is that you have high quality designers. A high quality designer can be from everywhere, but isn't necessarily from everywhere. So we see large concentrations of our designers in Europe, Southern Europe, and the Americas in general. Now, there's always specific countries in which designers are better educated in the field of design than others. And that has to do with where the agencies traditionally were. It has to do where the universities are. Definitely also some countries where they're not so well educated in design and where you just see a lot of growing pains. Let's put it that way.
Yep. And also on the subject of education, do you think we should put more emphasis as a society on arts and humanities, especially for graduates entering the designer marketplace?
Yeah, working in my field, I would say absolutely without a doubt. But that being said, I'm going to be practical on this one as well. I mean, it's so important that when we educate people in this field, that we make sure that they have a tangible skill set with which they can find a job. Especially in lower cost countries, there's absolutely no use in educating people in something that they won't be able to, earn a living with, because they're going to end up doing something completely different. You don't want somebody to be educated as a fantastic designer to end up driving a taxi cab somewhere. That would be a real shame of the talent. So I think we don't just need to educate them. We need to make sure that they're educated in the right way and that we help develop them and help map out a career path in the directions in which they can go, and also try and get them the relevant experience, because a designer without a portfolio, without an experience, will have a very high degree of difficulty finding a job.
Absolutely. And I think you touch on there, I think we also need to give these people who are just coming out of uni, in particular, a bit of sense of purpose, and this is where how automation comes back in, because then we can be freed up to do purposeful work.
Yeah, absolutely.
What role would AI play in the creative agencies of tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And, we ask ourselves the same questions, especially as, we do occasionally see some platforms, semi-competing platforms pop up and sort of claim that they're using AI to create designs. And, then you sort of start to analyze the technology behind it. And you come to the conclusion that AI is just a buzzword that's being used, but in reality, there's very little AI to it. It's not something that is incredibly prevalent yet at this stage. I think it will be incredibly important over time. I think the first things we'll start to see with AI is that we'll start to see a higher degree of automation on the designer side, tools to help the designer create what the client wants. I believe that predictive algorithms can be a big thing, and that's something we're actively looking into as well. I mean, what is the client actually going to end up choosing based on what they selected in the first instance? That means that the designer can also get some guidance with regards to what typography to use or what type of imagery to use or what style of illustrations to make. So I think there's specific guidance that we can help not waste the designer's time, because at the end of the day, a designer ends up spending 80% of his time or more even in specific cases on creating stuff that the client doesn't want. It's rarely ever a straight path. I think the more that we can hammer out this wastage, the more it will help the designers and the better it will be. I think a predictive algorithm should be very interesting in that particular field, reduce waste, increase profitability. So I think that's really useful. On the other hand, I think, if you take that a little step further, I think there can be some autonomous typography that can be created according to existing typefaces that already exist. That can be either, in the first instance, maybe extrapolated and otherwise created from scratch at a later stage in order for people to have an ownable typeface for their specific brand. I think that's definitely something that could be of great interest. And then we can go down the whole copyright route. I think AI can help a lot with also recognizing which things already exist. And I think there's a big need in that as well, because stuff is being copied left, right, and center all over the world at this moment in time. And clients don't have a real way of figuring out, hey, is my work original? You might think you got a great deal by going to somebody and, paying them $20 and saying, hey, I got a great logo. But then you find out like 2 months later, when you've got it on all your signage and everything, that actually the guy down the street has exactly the same thing. So there's always that side. So I think there's really a huge array of possibilities with AI, going all the way to some degree of autonomous designing, but I think we're going to be way down the line on that one.
Wow, that's just definitely some food for thought. And what else is driving your curiosity right now?
I'm a curious being by nature, so I tend to dig into things all over the place. One of the areas is definitely what we covered is AI. That's something that does drive me and just drive an interest on one hand. I think the predictive algorithm that I mentioned, I think that's something that when I was in the agency, I had quite a good reputation for being able to know what the client was going to pick in advance. Now, if I can do it, a machine should be able to do it better. I think that's going to be really interesting to see, because if a machine can say, even if it's with only 70% accuracy, which of the options the client is going to pick, then that's going to be of tremendous use. And it will just depend on which input variables and everything they'll be relevant for. So I think those are things. Besides that, in personal life, I love cooking. Got 2 kids, so that's keeping me busy. And I enjoy photography as well, so that's spiking my curiosity too. On the other hand, we discussed some biohacking, and I've been looking into that, and that seems incredibly interesting. What's going on over there? I mean, are we going to live forever?
Yeah, that's one of my curiosities as well. I mean, I think we're about the similar age, Christian, similar vintage. And I think I like the idea of turning 70 and still look like I'm about 40.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
It would be nice. We make old people a thing of the past. I think.
Just turn back the clock 10 years.
Yeah, it is fascinating, and also I think the prospect too, relating back to the design, is that if we have longer lives, then we can probably have longer time to master some really meaningful work like art design, graphic design, things like that. So then we can really be true top of that game. I think that'd be quite an interesting prospect in the future.
And then we can get to the philosophical discussion of how does that change branding? Because brands are now constantly rejuvenating their image to match the next generation. So is that still necessary if people are going to live much longer? Do you just allow a brand to grow with that generation, become that generation's brand? At what point do you have to make a jump at that stage? Because if you don't have an aging population, everything's upside down in that field.
Absolutely, and I mean that's brand legacy. I mean, it's a very interesting, as you said, philosophical point. You look at, say, something like Levi jeans, which is generally associated with Gen X, baby boomers, but not so much the Gen Z. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that idea. That's
It opens up a whole can of worms. I'll tell
it
you
does.
that much.
Yeah, that does open a whole can of worms. I think it might be another discussion. Well, guys, I think I really enjoyed our chat this afternoon. And Himanshu, have you got anything else to add, or you?
No, I think it's perfect what Christian has said. And I definitely think that AI is going to shape some aspects of how advertising as an industry is going to move. It's going to help designers a lot to save a lot of different times. And this is what I have to sum up. But I think that more or less Christian has already covered everything we wanted to bring in front of you and have a discussion.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. It's all good.
Yeah.
Be a bit of a rude host for me not to least knowledge is in the room. So, well, fellas, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you this afternoon. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And finally, where else can we find you?
You can find us on designbro.com, and we have a wide range of graphic design services there. And try us out.
Will do. And my future heads will give you the love and support that you need.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, Dave.
No worries. My pleasure.
Thanks, Dave.
Cheers.
And thank you to Christian and Himanshu for their input. And finally, we covered what automation and AI is going to shape the workforce, but what are cobots going to be like as co-workers? And my final guest is Brett Goss from Affinity over in Sydney, and Brett designs and builds automated virtual assistants, which is different to a chatbot as we covered in previous episodes. And this will give you a more insight on how AI will be shaping your workforce that you'll be going back into, as well as being opening up right now and into the future for this decade. And Brett is going to join us on the line right now. We're continuing our discussion about automation and robots and how they're going to take over our jobs. And we've got a very special guest. We've got Brett from Affinity Technology over in Sydney. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be here.
Can you just talk us through and give us the backstory behind Affinity and how did it all come about?
Yeah, sure. No problem. Well, we're a technology consulting firm, and we are dedicated to helping organisations build modern digital workplaces. And we do that with Microsoft 365 and intelligent automation solutions. In simple words, we exist to change the way people work, and that's pretty much our why purpose, by removing the mundane tasks that many people have to do in their daily work and let them focus on high value tasks. That's pretty much our mission and where we go.
And the terms like automation and artificial intelligence been exchangeable, pretty much on almost every tech podcast there is. For the sake of our listeners, can you give us a definition and the difference between the two?
Robotic automation is based on the notion of software robots. It's also called digital co-workers. And the digital co-workers, it's basically a program designed to mimic humans' tasks or their workflow in front of their computer, replicating the mouse clicks, the keystrokes, extracting information in fields from documents, for example.
Yep.
When you talk about artificial intelligence, it's actually one of the underpinning technologies that allows robotic process automation to function.
Yeah, I love that, really, the concept of the digital co-worker. So why robot process automation?
A lot of organisations in the corporate space, not-for-profit space, government space, have got a lot of knowledge workers who are actually there fulfilling their jobs and their tasks, and they're actually doing a lot of mundane tasks, whether it's filling in timesheets, Excel spreadsheets, and a lot of it is repetitive work, and it doesn't allow them to focus on high-value tasks. So what we can do is we can automate those processes, not all of them, but most of them, and give them back that time that lets them have the ability to be able to go on and focus on high-value tasks. Particularly, we've seen this over the last 12 months to 2 years, where a lot of organisations have had their people actually continue to do those mundane tasks remotely, but not focus on the higher value tasks. And so it gives them back that time to be able to be, I don't want to use the word productive, it's more about quality of life for the people who are actually doing the work, which is really important. It's one of the things that we stand for.
And can you get some real specific samples of how they can free up the time with these mundane tasks around the office?
Yeah, I can do that pretty well, yeah. So by augmenting a lot of the work that humans are doing and boosting their productivity, we can reduce the risk of errors. That increases compliance. And a good example would be in offboarding staff member. So we can automate that process. So all the IT processes, everything is closed. They're off the books for that organisation. So we can automate that process. And that enables us to help organisations reduce their costs by having to do reworking of mistakes. But more importantly, it increases the employee engagement and retention, and that helps retain the knowledge workers and attract talent who wants to be fulfilled in their work life.
Again, it's like the Google Maps scenario of the car. No, it doesn't drive the car, but just directs you and assists you in that way.
That's right. So you're automating those processes. There's no high-level decision-making. So if I look in my role, for example, where I have to deal with clients and understanding what they're doing and how they want to do, that's very subjective. Right, as opposed to what objective is when a robot does the process and just follows that process.
And also, I guess, too, because thanks to the robots that don't ever sleep, you can probably keep your business open for much longer if that's the case.
Well, one of the big advantages of using this, it all sits in the cloud.
Yeah.
And it runs 24/7. It's very secure. It doesn't retain or store any data. It's actually just doing those functions of those keystrokes. So if there's nothing to prompt it to work, it won't work. But typically it could be anything from receiving invoices as emails, and a lot of people still work that in their organisation. Those invoices being collected, scanned and reviewed by the robots, or the digital co-worker if you like. And then that's compared to a sales order or a purchase order that organisation has issued. It matches, and then that processes it through to completion and payment.
Interesting. And are the robots here to take our jobs?
No.
Or is there can we more envision more of a collaborative type scenario?
Look, it's very similar to how when PCs first came out, everyone said that PCs are going to take our jobs. And we find now we're actually using them more than ever, whether it's handheld or desktop or, portable or mobile. They're not here to take our jobs. I think the biggest increase in this sort of technology is to be able to, if I refer back to this whole mundane task and eliminate that human glue in those mundane tasks and give the user the ability to be able to be a high value knowledge worker and focus on a lot of things that are more important. And a good thing that we've seen, and I'll touch back on the COVID issue, is a lot of organisations have had to transition from business continuity planning to business resilience. And business resilience is really important, and it lets them be more tactile and versatile and actually be able to adapt quicker. And if a lot of those mundane tasks are being done, whether it's timesheets, accounts processing, or those sorts of parts of finance or HR and other parts, even on the workshop floor, it gives organisations the ability to focus on the more tasks that are going to make them more resilient moving forward when we have disasters like we've had recently with COVID.
It's a very valid point. And the great pivot, I say, really kicked in last year, and I think resilience is the key moving forward. And I think uncertain times you need that sort of ability to move really quickly, and I think AI really assists in that.
Absolutely, yeah. The resilience is what to look out for.
And is there any other things you'd like to say to win over the most hardened skeptics of automation? Yeah,
look, I think, you'll see over the next 5 to 10 years it will be more common, the digital co-workers and robotic process automation. Digital co-workers will be more common, but they'll augment significant tasks and actions that are just really want to be done today by people in front of the computer. And it won't take people's roles away. They'll transition to more higher value tasks. So a lot of organisations now offshore a lot of this, to other countries. And, we're sort of saying, keep that here, use some automation process and make it work with your existing team.
Interesting. And as this podcast is about the future, Brett, just take a trip up to, say, 15 years in the future, the year 2036. How do you envision the workplace then?
Yeah, I just touched on that. Yeah, I think, you'll see a lot more digital co-workers. They'll be more common across a lot of organisations. They'll do a lot of those tasks, that are done today in front of the computer. And the co-worker market is due to reach something like 860 billion by 2025. Wow. Yeah, it's quite large, but the emphasis is really on the quality of life for employees. So the strong focus is on the very unique human value that people can add to what they do in their tasks every day. And that's something that robots won't replace.
And what else is driving your curiosity?
We're focusing a lot across a lot of vertical segments, finance and health. One of the ones really peaking for us is the not-for-profit sector.
Wow.
And that drives interest for us because a lot of those organisations are trying to do a lot more with less, and we've seen it particularly in the last 12 months. So we're engaging with a number of them at the moment to try and help them through that process and continue to deliver the services that they do and have a great impact on people's lives in a very human-centric way.
That's really interesting. I really like that idea. I mean, a lot of these non-for-profits also run by volunteers, so they're obviously not that cashed up unless...
Well, there's a lot of them that are quite large, and they still, have all the issues of all sorts of large and small organisations, and we're looking at each one in its own unique way.
And is there anything I didn't ask but should?
I think we covered it pretty well, actually.
Finally, where else can we find you?
Well, you can look us up at definity.com.au. I'm on LinkedIn as well as the rest of the team. And we have a great YouTube channel, which I think everyone should go and have a look at, which really has some great video examples of the RPA process happening in this place, or the intelligent automation working.
No worries, Brett. It's been an absolute pleasure having you onto the show.
Thank you very much, Dave.
And a big thank you to Kaya, Christian, Himanshu and Brett for their inputs today. And I'm sure you got some value out of what they have to say. We're set the scene for the workforce in the future. But the big question is, are they safe? Join us next time on The Friendly Futurist as we're going to chat again with the cybersecurity experts about the state of cyber attacks today and how we can rebuild better tomorrow through blockchain technology to ensure that the workplace and hybrid work is a safe, productive environment. So be listening out next time on The Friendly Futurist for all that. The Friendly Futurist is a podcast West production. It's produced and edited by me, Dave Monk, further editing by Alvin Lacerna. If you love this show, there's many ways you can support us. First and foremost, now we're on the Acast app. Download the Acast app onto your smartphone. Subscribe, leave a review. That way you can find us whenever we release a new episode, and that way we can grow the community within that Acast ecosystem. If you don't want to use Acast, that's fine. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review on your favourite podcast platform wherever you find this show. And if you really want to support us, why not leave a tip or a donation and buy me a coffee? An oat flat white will be sufficient for me. Details in the show notes. And be sure to subscribe to my monthly newsletter where I discuss what I learned for the month, coming out at the end of the month, every month, and it's on Substack. Details are in the show notes. Until next time, friends, remember to stay curious, and the future is user-friendly.